Hey guys, this video will help with function inverses, which was the homework that was assigned Thursday, November 6th, or Friday, November 7th, depending on which class you're in, and that will be due Monday, the 10th of November, okay? I'm in a public place, it's a little loud, so bear with me. Hopefully everybody will be able to hear. I'll try to speak as closely into the mic as possible so that we can all hear this. So let's go through one or two homework problems. I think that will be helpful for people. On number one, you're presented with this function, and you're seeing if it matches up with the f of x function as an inverse. So what I would recommend doing is let's actually find g inverse of x. So what would we do first? Well, as you should have written down in your notes, we are going to switch the x and g of x variables, okay? Just like you would if you were graphing, we're going to switch these variables. So let's see what we get. G of x would become x. Okay. And the x variable would become g inverse of x, because now we're looking at an inverse. So this is what you should have. Notice all I have done is I've switched the variables. G of x is now x, 4 minus 3/2, and now x is now g inverse of x. So what we need to do now is we need to solve for this g inverse of x variable, okay? And what we're going to do first is we are going to do what we normally would do in such situations. We're going to subtract 4 from both sides of the equation in isolating that g inverse of x variable. Okay? So this is what you should have, okay? And of course the 4's would cancel out on the right side, and you're left with x minus 4 is equal to 3/2 g inverse of x. Okay? That's what you should have. Now the only piece left is to get rid of this 3/2 coefficient, and because you're multiplying by 3/2, what you can do is you can divide by 3/2. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to divide by 3/2 on both sides. Okay. So on this side, on the right side, the 3/2 would cancel out, and I'm left with g inverse of x is equal to, well, it's equal to this right here. But what's another way to write this? Well, because I'm dividing by 3/2, what's the opposite of dividing by a fraction? Multiplying by the reciprocal. So it would be x minus 4 times 2/3, or 2/3 x minus 4. Hopefully people remember that whenever you divide, you take something and you divide by a fraction. That's the same thing as multiplying by the inverse of that fraction, 2/3. Okay? So that's our answer, right down there at the very bottom. Okay? So let's do another one. And hopefully you'll really start to get the hang of this sort of thing by working through one other example. Okay? Let's do number 5. So on number 5, you're given oh, actually, and we never really answered the question on the last one. On number 1, we have to state if the given functions are inverses, and I think we determined that f of x wasn't the same thing that we got for the g inverse of x. So therefore, the answer would be no on number 1. Okay. Let's do number 5 now. So we're given f of n is equal to negative n plus 1 cubed, and we have to determine if that g of n is indeed the inverse. So once again, what do we do? Well, we're starting with this function. We're once again going to switch out. We're going to switch places with the variable, so f of n becomes simply n, and n becomes f inverse of n. So you should get something that looks like this, okay? So this is an interesting problem because we have a cube term. We're raising something to the third power. Well, what's the opposite or the inverse of raising something to the third power? Well, it's taking the cube root of that whole thing. But before we can do that, we have to get rid of this pesky minus sign right here, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide both sides by -1. And that will get rid of the negative sign over here. So we're left with just this as a positive. And on the other side, n divided by -1 is just simply negative n. Okay? So that is... So this is what you should have. Okay? Now, how do we get rid of this to the third power? We take the cube roots. Okay. The cube root is just like the square root, except it's cubed. Okay, and we have to write that little 3 to indicate that. So now what are we left with? Well, the cube root of -n is equal to the cube and the third power cancel out. So we have f to the -1 of n, the plus 1. And what's the very last step? Well, we want this by itself, so we have to subtract the negative, we have to subtract off of 1. So -1 from both sides. So f inverse of n is equal to the cube root of n minus 1. I know it's hard to see, but it's right here at the very, very bottom, okay? Cube root of n minus 1 should be the answer. So does that match up with the other equation that we're given in number 5? No, it does not. So the correct answer on number 5 should be no. If you have any questions, feel free to email me over the weekend, and we'll see you guys on Monday. Thank you.